My mic was on mute. I'm going to start again. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Max of BuzzTox here. And as I was saying, we've done one live stream before, and it was the prediction of, what would happen in Westworld before the show actually aired. And this time I wanted to do a live stream right in the middle of the show so we can talk about what we've seen, what we can expect, and really try and flesh out the season, what we can see going forward. And I gotta say, today has been an insane day for me. I'm actually moving out of this house, and today was the last moving day. So my room has been completely packed up. This is the last live stream I'm going to be doing in this location. It's kind of sad. So I really wanted to do a live stream with you guys, share that experience, and then I'm going to tear this place down, and I'm going to build a new studio somewhere else. But before we get started, I just want to say hi to everybody. Hey, Marilyn Bentley, you're a huge fan. I remember you from so far back. Thank you so much for all of your support and all your participation. I really appreciate it. Carrie Neves, how's it going? RNA, Joanna, Barbara Askar, how's it going, guys? I'm sorry that you couldn't hear me. I had the mute on, a rookie mistake. I don't stream enough, apparently. But before we get started and we talk Westworld, I took... what's it called? I released a question, and I wanted to see, not a question, sorry. I wanted people to list their own questions. And I got one person named Jennifer, and they asked me a Westworld question that I feel like I should really answer first, and then we can have a Westworld discussion for maybe an hour, hour and a half. We'll see how long it can go. But Jennifer had to say, I'm a Game of Thrones fan. I read all the books, watch the show. I love theorizing about what something could mean and where the story will go. I made it through one season of Westworld and feel like it's one big hot mess, not going anywhere. Am I wrong? Do you believe Westworld is well fleshed out, as well as fleshed out as Game of Thrones? I just feel like it's a jumbled mess. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about Westworld and how it compares to Game of Thrones. But I got to be honest, I'm known for Game of Thrones, and I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I'm excited to get back into my Game of Thrones videos. But something about Westworld, I really enjoy making content for it. I love making videos. I love producing theories because I think, well, you talk about theories and predictions for Game of Thrones. I feel like it gets amplified by 100 with Westworld because they dive into science fiction, real deep science today. And they play with themes and timelines that naturally helps us or makes us want to speculate, theorize, predict. And I think it's perfect for that community. And Westworld as a show, I've enjoyed it more. These 2 seasons I've enjoyed more than any series. If I'm going to compare it to Game of Thrones, I got to say I'm enjoying these 2 seasons more than I have the first 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. And because I love really deep TV, and I feel like Game of Thrones was like that. But I got to say in season 7, it went a little, I didn't like the way it worked out. So I'm not completely happy with Game of Thrones. I hope they spin it around in the finale. The final season, but we'll see. And that brings up this Westworld. I don't know how long this show is going to last. I think initially we heard that they would last like 4 seasons, 5 seasons, and I'd be really interested to see where that goes because I feel like every season so far tells a complete story. Season 1, it could have been a standalone 1 season standoff show. We saw Dolores reach consciousness, and she would, theoretically that's the host takeover. This season's more about instead of just diving into host consciousness, it's about the human transfer to a host, about immortality. And I believe Ford's storyline, Journey into Night, is centered around the host getting sentience as well as maybe humans transferring over. And if you guys watch my explained video, I think that's why it's so important to have this human and host connection that Maeve and Bernard have. You got to give it to Maeve. She has good relationships with Felix, Sizemore. Bernard is building relationships with Elsie, whereas Dolores is just anti-human. And I think that could bite her in the butt. And it's important. I think it's important going forward since all these characters are, potentially we could have a human jumping over to a host body. But we'll see. Checking out who else is in the chat. Chris Weinberger. Hey, what's going on? Christian Oles. Gemma Rouser. Hey, big fan. Thank you so much. That's awesome. That's so awesome. Barbara Askar. Hi from Pakistan. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on. Toto Cult, awesome. G-Man, love your Westworld reviews. Thank you so much. And you're a GOT fan, I gotta say. This is a very Westworld specific live stream, but Game of Thrones has to come out soon. Once I get settled in my house, I'm going to start doing those Game of Thrones videos, rolling them back out, because those prediction videos need some love. And I have episode 3 written. I've had it written for like a month. So it's just about recording it and putting it up there. People who don't like Westworld simply don't get it. You know what? I appreciate the sentiment or the comment, but it is a certain taste. And if somebody doesn't like Westworld, I wouldn't say that they don't get it. I think a lot of people that I've seen within the fan community don't like Westworld, and they do completely understand the show. It's just not their cup of tea, and that's fine. Because I find the show is a lot more polarizing than Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones deals with fantasy, which is a little more polarizing, but it deals with family. It deals with all these common things that we live in our daily lives. Whereas Westworld it deals with timelines. It's more jumbled. It's confusing, and I think the regular fan just isn't into that. And I know some people like to just turn their mind off and watch TV, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I personally love being challenged. And that's why I love Westworld so much. And I hope it continues to grow and grow. And I hope the fan community grows and grows. And it's, I think so far it's doing great. It's got a really big fan community who theorizes and predicts, and it's amazing. And I absolutely love it. I'm not sure, but I think Game of Thrones took a little bit longer to pick up. But that being said, I don't think Westworld's going to grow to the scale of Game of Thrones. All right, looks like we're getting into the questions. All right, let's see what everyone's saying. Jitner, better than GOT. Why? Team of great writers is better than David and Dan. I live and breathe Game of Thrones. I'm enjoying Westworld more personally. It's just the writing, and I'm really into the plot and the storyline. And I honestly got to say, I think one of the reasons why I love Westworld so much is because of my job. Because I get to sit down and theorize and speculate about Westworld. I'm not like a regular fan. I dive deep into these concepts. And that's why I love this show so much, because I have the material to dive into. So that's why I personally am enjoying Westworld right now more than Game of Thrones. Please let us know more as to why you feel Maeve isn't conscious. Okay. I'm going to need a drink of water before I get into this. Okay. So I'm up for criticism. If you guys disagree, put it in the chat. I'll read it, and we'll have a discussion. So Maeve being conscious. So first, it stems back to my belief in season 1. When season 1 finished, I walked into season 2 being like, done. Dolores is conscious. Maeve isn't conscious. That was my initial interpretation. And then the directors of the show came forward, and I'm not ignorant to this. I know they came forward and they said Maeve reached consciousness, and she made that choice herself to go off the train and get her daughter. And as far as I know, that is, and please let me know if you have more information, but as far as I know, that is the argument on why Maeve is conscious. She's conscious because the writers and the producers said so. Whereas when I look at Maeve and her storyline, I would say thematically it doesn't make sense for her to have reached consciousness. And for many reasons. Last season, we watched Dolores go through loop after loop after loop. And she suffered and suffered and suffered. And it was Arnold that allowed her to, or Bernard, sorry, that horrible memory and that relationship she built with Arnold, and the fact that she had to kill him, the fact that she saw the gun and she saw Bernard again, launched her into consciousness. That was the thing that launched her. And the Men in Black definitely played a role. And that took the course of a whole season. During that one season, I understand Maeve had an experience with the Man in Black, and she had that traumatic event with her daughter, but that was only one traumatic event. And that was the only loop that we've seen. And everything that we've ever seen of Maeve becoming more conscious, her manipulating Felix and Sylvester, every step she took was specifically programmed by Ford for her to do that. He knew that Felix and Sylvester were the perfect people for her to manipulate and outmaneuver. He allowed Bernard to shoot himself in the head because he knew Maeve was going to go there and bring him back online. So The difference there is that Maeve didn't have a journey to consciousness. There was no journey at all. She was told what to do in season 1, and that resulted in her getting on the train. And there's another argument. It says that infiltrate the mainland. Well, just after infiltrate the mainland, it says override. Override text, override whatever. That means to override or negate the previous mainland that was there. And speaking on top of that of Ford's character, Ford would never have a host that is not conscious enter the mainland. What has Maeve done up to the point of the train to be conscious? She made no decision. She was told to go to that train. So how does she magically become conscious on that train? She doesn't. And that's where I think the key is, and that's where my mind was going into Westworld. And it says override code. She goes in. Now let's talk about season 2. Season 2, I'm seeing thematics with Maeve that we're seeing with Dolores. Maeve is starting to go through those loops, but it's hard to recognize because she's in a unique position where she's enabled to have these abilities. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is my opinion. But in season 1, it left her being able to control the hosts. It left her with the ability to do all these things. And I believe that pushes into season 2 where she's going after her daughter. Now, I think especially this episode, and I'm blanking on other Maeve experiences, but first of all, Sizemore, he's able to repeat her code or her dialogue. He did it to Hector to prove that, hey, I do know you after all. I wrote some of your dialogue. And in episode 1, we saw him repeat what Maeve would have said because she's still following that dialogue. And her storyline in general, I believe she's on a crash course to consciousness. And it's that concept of reveries and it's that concept of loops. And we're seeing that loop unfold. We saw that loop unfold last episode. No matter how far she goes, she went to Shogun World, but she went back to get her daughter. And then the loop continues. She sees her daughter. There's been Ford meddling in the plot. And we know that because Maeve's daughter said she doesn't want to be taken away by that man who's the man in black. So Ford went in there and updated Maeve's daughter's storyline and gave her a new mother, which was done anyway, but whatever. And the fact that her daughter she was no longer the mother of her daughter. And the fact that the natives came, it was that traumatic event again. She had to relive it over again. And this is my prediction, which there's no validity to it, but the man in black was attacked by Ghost Nation this episode. Maeve was attacked by Ghost Nation this episode. I believe that William, the man in black, is on a course of self-discovery. I talk about it over and over again. He is coming to terms with the mistakes that he made, and that's a part of Ford's storyline reaching the door. First thing was Lawrence. He had to look at Cradle dance with Lawrence's wife. That reminded him of the villain that he was, and he made the right choice. He was given his daughter, making wrongs right again, and I think we're going to see that unfold more. And I think the next step is to unite William and Maeve, the worst thing William ever done, and seeing that unfold and having to pay for that. And I think that could push her to consciousness, much like Dolores looked at Bernard, and that was the traumatic thing. That was her trigger. I believe that William is Maeve's trigger. And I think that Maeve's storyline right now is too well written. And I think Ford is in the background manipulating and controlling her. And you can make arguments about the mesh network. I don't think Dolores can use the mesh network ever because she's broken everything there is to do with her code. I think Maeve could not control Dolores because she's not operating on anyone's code. She's not operating on anyone's dialogue. She is completely alone. If you looked at her code, I think it would be spherical, much like those human host hybrids. And I think Maeve is able to access this network, and I think that's contributed to her finding her new voice, consciousness. She's able to opt into all these people because she's connected. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see that unfold, but I'm sure there's more reasons. Unfortunately, they're not popping in my head, but I am very passionate that Maeve is not conscious. And if you think she is conscious, please let me know your reasons. And I'm genuinely really interested to hear them. And I don't necessarily think that you're wrong. It's just a discussion. What else do we got here? You know what's funny is that, so I go on that rampage. I'm sorry, I talked for like 5 minutes on that one question. And that's how you tell. Westworld, you can talk forever on these, what's it called? Sorry, guys, I'm just looking for the chat. I need to keep track of my questions here. Jesus. So how long Ford is in the cradle? Did we ever see him transitioning into that digital space? No. I believe Ford transitioning into that digital space is completely within the confines of this season. And I think that has to do with Bernard's flashbacks. So Ford in season 1, we saw some of the mechanisms playing out. We saw him print a body, which there isn't an answer for yet. We saw him planning the church. He was moving pieces around. He literally had the army of hosts lined up for the shooting at the gala. And I believe this part of the planning we're starting to see unfold in this season, where Ford thinks that in order to allow Dolores and other hosts reach consciousness, he's going to go in the cradle and he's going to hold down the mesa and just make it difficult to take it over again. So I think that's the journey we're seeing of Bernard. That a couple days probably before the gala, Ford had Bernard go and print his own control module, and that's that spherical thing that goes inside the brain capsule. He had him print that, take it to the cradle, and then that was Ford in the cradle. I think he's been in there not very long. And I think the cradle is a good answer for this human to host consciousness. It's a good way to deal with your immortality in a non-threatening way. Like James Delos was thrown into real world and told that his family was dead, whereas Ford is already aware of Westworld and he's able to go in there and live in this timeless loop, so to say, that matches his, you know the word I'm trying to say. Oh, there was a question. Okay, I'm back on track, guys. Good stuff. Joanna, love Ford at the end playing piano. Was nice, full circle after he said those composers became music. A tell that he is within the hive mind. Thoughts? Totally agree. You know what's funny is I know Elsie mentioned the hive mind in the last episode, but I'm actually not completely aware or am blanking on what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I apologize. I totally forgot what hive mind is. But I think it is genius. I feel like an idiot, but I feel like it's genius that Ford has transferred into that cradle. To be honest, first of all, Anthony Hopkins is expensive as hell, and you don't want to keep him going. So I think once Ford does his rule or does what he wanted to do, he's going to pull the plug. And I think that's going to be one of Ford's final goodbyes, because I think Ford believes that, and he mentions it in season 1. It's the fact that you never die until the last person forgets you or doesn't remember you. And with Ford, he's essentially a god. And all the beings that walk the earth after him will be creations of him. So I think he's okay to die at this point. And he, in his own way, became immortal through his art. And that's kind of what you're saying. Composer's music lives on. Gina Simmons, Dolores is wary of Teddy now. I feel like he's going to question her leadership or what she has done to him. I was really thrown off by the Teddy-Dolores interaction last episode, because Dolores kept saying, you fixed me, you fixed me, you fixed me. And in my mind is like, Teddy, you're not broken. You're fine. But I get it. The issue I have with Teddy, and I talked about this in my explained video, is the duality between Dolores and Maeve. People like to say hero and villain, and I disagree. I think there's differences in ideologies, and I don't think it makes one good or bad. And what I talk about, first of all, is Dolores, okay? Dolores is long-term. She believes that these hosts they need to suffer and they need to suffer and they need to be throughout their loops. And then on their own, they can hopefully reach consciousness. And during that journey, she's changing Teddy. She's changing hosts to fit in her narrative. And Maeve even mentions to her when they come together, she says, you have these people following you, but they're not free. Angela, all of Dolores' men were coded by Ford to follow her. And now she's changing Teddy because he's not who he's supposed to be to help Dolores reach her goal. And is that right? Is it right for her to take away freedom for people in the present so potentially they could be conscious in the future? Whereas Maeve is kind of doing the opposite, which I find equally as interesting. She's giving people freedom now. She allowed Musashi to risk his life for them. She allowed Akane to stay with her daughter. And it's these choices of freedom. She's providing people these freedoms to make their own decisions, but they're not conscious yet. So it's that duality that I think is going to be like very interesting. And it's interesting how Maeve is giving freedom to hosts, and she has the ability to completely control them, but she's not in most instances. So I find that really interesting. And in regards to Teddy changing his mind, I don't know. His character seems very two-faced right now. We just have to start seeing him access those reveries. I constantly say that, this Teddy seems a little more serious, a little bit more determined, but at the end of the day, he'll form himself and find his own center. And with Teddy, there's a big question mark because he was found in the lake. And I'm guessing that he was one of the virgin bodies where the complete essence of Teddy was transferred into another body. So I think Teddy was transferred as like who he is or his awareness. I'm not sure. But I don't think Teddy's going to be changing his mind on Dolores anytime soon because she made sure. He was a little worried and she altered him. So I don't think there's much Teddy can do at this moment. How do you think they're going to destroy the Cradle? And if it is destroyed, then Ford is officially dead. Is he officially dead? I'm going to make a very tinfoil hat theory. Because Bernard is talking with Dolores and they're having the interview to test fidelity. That makes me think that this Bernard that Dolores is sitting down talking to, he has Bernard's memories. He has Bernard's recollection because he's saying, I woke up on the distant shore. You were across the ocean from me. You left me behind, blah, blah, blah. The waters were rising around me. That literally describes episode 1, what happened. The waters rose to flood the valley so Dolores could hide out in the valley beyond or whatever. So I think she's sitting down with this Bernard potentially. And I think it could be in the Great Valley Beyond when they make it to that location. We know in the present that they say that the Cradle has been burned. Floors 42 through 45 or something, they've been burned, and they even show that it was burned. So I think it's going to be destroyed. And how do I think they're going to destroy it? Maybe shoot it, set it on fire. I don't know. But it's clear that Dolores would want to destroy it because it has all the back stories of every single host. And for Dolores, who wants to break free of their constraints, you can't have documented storylines that they're programmed to do. So it's necessary for them to destroy it. Whereas Bernard, maybe he picks up a gun to defend the Cradle. Who knows? And I'm pretty sure that Bernard and Dolores will come back together because the Cradle is a crazy asset. And the Cradle's at a point where I have so many thoughts of what could happen with the Cradle in my head that I need them to give me a concrete direction of what's plausible and what isn't. Because essentially the Cradle right now is a full-blown real Westworld, except it's simulated. So you could take, first of all, they could put guests in the Cradle. They could take guest DNA, guest experiences, print those modules like they did with James Delos, throw it in the simulator, have them live, and that's a way to bootstrap consciousness. You could throw Dolores in there. You could pop off Dolores' skull, throw in her thing, and have her live in her loop constantly. Speed it up. That's fast consciousness. That's pushing suffering as fast as possible. So I think the possibilities with the Cradle are crazy. And shutting down the Cradle completely, Ford may still be around in the networks. I'm not completely sure, but I have a feeling, I don't know why, but I have a feeling like when they reach their goal, whatever that is, Ford's going to go, done, boom, and just, I don't know, he'd terminate himself or something. Is William a host? So I've been seeing in the comment section that a lot of people are saying William's a host, and I don't read Reddit, so I don't know what the popular theories are right now. I think it's best if I just stay true to what I think is going to happen. And I've been seeing this thing around that William's a host, and for me, definitely not. I think that's a cheap gimmick that they've already played out in season 1. So just from an entertainment and a storytelling perspective, it's not smart because they've already played that gimmick. Secondly, to my knowledge, there's no effective any effective information that can communicate to me that William is a host. Some people say like, oh, he thought his daughter was afraid of elephants, but really it was the wife. Really, like that to me is not strong enough evidence to suggest that he's a host. I think to me it shows his absence as a father, and that deepens his character as it goes. You even see the pain on his face when his daughter says that it wasn't her who was afraid of elephants. So with William, I don't see anywhere at all where he could be a host. But where I do see, where I really am interested in and I really want to see, I made it my second episode, is the door to Dolores. I think William could become a host, but a conscious host. The first host to become conscious. And I just think all the plot lines are leading to that direction. And if it doesn't happen, I will be flabbergasted, because this theory that I came up with, if it follows the same steps as William and the Man in Black. In season 1, Trev and I are like, William's the Man in Black in episode 2. And in every single episode, people said that he wasn't, and people said that he was. But everything I saw proved it, and proved it, and proved it, and proved it, and proved it. And the same thing's happening this season. Everything that I'm seeing is proving and proving and proving and proving that William is going to walk through that door, and that door is to transcend a body, walk through a new world. And that will be him finding his new body. And I think it's perfect. I think it would be perfect storytelling. So I think that, if anything, is how William will become a host. As for his daughter, people are saying that Grace is a host. I don't think so either. If she was a host, there'd be no point in showing her in Rajworld. And I think her being a host, and William suspects that she's a host, much like the audience. But I think she's the real deal. And I think we're going to learn that. She said that she decided to come in because she was invited to the gala. I think that Ford, I'm just going to keep putting everything on Ford. I think Ford had a plan, and he got Grace in place because she is necessary. She is the suffering and the sacrifice that if William will jump through the door into a host body, she would be the death of his old reality, the suffering into the new reality, which is immortality. And that's how I think his story would go. Marilyn Bentley, I'm enjoying Westworld more than GOT2. GOT just needs to end. Well, I want it to keep going really bad, but I just wish that they would have give me 10 episodes, not 6. CL anybody. It is a consciousness, spiritual self-discovery show. You're damn right it is. Arine, Maeve drew her own maze in the dirt and laid in the middle. To be honest, I don't know how that ended up just appearing, but I guess it was cinematic. Christy Goldenstein, do you think that the Man in Black is a host when he was speaking to his daughter in episode 6? Once again, no. G-Man, was Bernard going into the hive mind by Ford all along to turn him into Arnold? He looked shocked when he saw the park complete in action. He was especially shocked when he saw Teddy and Dolores. I don't know. The the whole Bernard Arnold thing is interesting, and I know in the early episodes I was saying that Bernard and Arnold are going to fuse, and to me that it makes more and more sense, only because I've been leaning on one piece of evidence this whole show, and if you watch all my videos, I bring it up pretty much every video, and that's the fact that when we see Bernard's flashbacks, some people overlook it, but he sees a flashback of Arnold and Dolores, which to me means that it's shared consciousness. I'm not sure how they're going to get there. It looks like they're utilizing the Cradle and they're testing for fidelity. I try to work in a new body component to it, but it seems like he's leaking brain fluid, so I think he needs a new body. But I think Bernard, I like the story of Bernard finding himself willingly, and I think that's what Bernard would want to do. That's why I think the Arnold-Bernard split would be forced upon him by Ford or Dolores. I'm not necessarily sure who, and I don't really know why. That's the one part that I'm kind of iffy on. Yeah, I'm kind of unsure. Sigalit Menashi, thank you so much for $10. Oh my God, that's just amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. So once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Wow, I'm in shock. That's awesome. Pearl Litica 11. How is it possible that Ford planned all of these different outcomes, each dependent on the actions of humans as well as the machines? Well, a lot of these scenarios, I would say, look at James Delos. How are they able to have him follow his script? Because Ford understands people. He understands every nook and cranny of every person he ever needs in his storyline. He needs, like Felix and Sylvester, he needed them. He picked them specifically because he knew the kind of people they were. And he knew that if he put Maeve with them, she would be able to persuade them to get what she wanted. And I need somebody to give me more examples that I can try and like justify it. But that's how I justify it. I see it as he knows, and he was planning it a shit ton. So I hope he does a good job. So yeah. CL, anybody. I don't trust Charlotte. What happens to her? I don't trust her either. And she's going to last a lot longer. And you can tell that she's not trustworthy just by, in my explained video for episode 3, I believe, I'm not sure. When we see Bernard in the present timeline, he gets off the beach. He goes to the gala. He goes and finds the tiger. He goes and sees the water. He goes to the mesa. And then he meets Charlotte. And Charlotte was acting weird. And I was like, Charlotte knows. Charlotte most definitely knows that he's a host. And we're seeing that unfold next episode. In the preview, we see Bernard walking behind her when she displays his 4 or 5 bodies. And I think she's going to confront Bernard on the fact that he's a host. Whether she can control him with voice commands, I'm not sure. And that leads us to the past storyline, the 2 weeks in between the gala and when Bernard woke up on the beach. And what's happening right now is Dolores is driving that train into the mesa and she's laying it under attack. We have Ashley, Charlotte, and a couple other people who just got the map back online, and they have Abernathy. I'm pretty sure we're going to see Teddy and Dolores bust in. We're going to see them. We're going to see them try and take Abernathy. There's a lot of implications. Oh, should I? I'm debating on if I should leave a little hint of the preview that's coming. I have it recorded. But they're going ring-a-ding-ding. They're going for Abernathy. And I think while that happens and while it doesn't work out, I think Ashley's going to take Charlotte and they're going to bounce. They're going to go somewhere safe. And I just quickly want to talk about the condition of Abernathy. I'm going to mention in the preview video coming up, but I'll give you a little glimpse. Abernathy was like nailed down to the chair. He's in rough condition, guys. And his consciousness is, he's jumping between storylines, which is very important. Sizemore gave him that one-line blank storyline where he keeps saying he needs to get to the train. I think what a lot of people who watch the show are thinking that Sizemore did such a bad job, he's glitching out. I would say no, he's glitching out because, first of all the data, obviously there's some glitching there. But the fact that he's jumping through storylines means that he is approaching consciousness. He is not necessarily approaching, but he's on the maze. he's confused with his timelines. He's trying to piece things together. And I think that's going to come full circle. But a key shot that we see, we get a lot of imagery that there's going to be a new body being printed next episode. And I think Abernathy might have to be printed again. We even see Dolores standing with a brain capsule. I think they're going to have to take out Abernathy's brain and give him a brand new body and maybe fix him up a bit. And I think Bernard would be a big help in doing that. Oh my God. All these donations. What? Thank you guys so much. Marilyn Bentley, thank you so much. Even for being a Patreon, like I really support it. Like you're amazing. Max, thank you for all you do and taking the time to talk Westworld with us. I'd be happy to mod for you like I do for the others doing these live streams to help with questions. You know what? That'd be great. I need to learn the details of that, so we'll talk about it later, Marilyn. Thank you so much. Joanna, like, thank you so much. $10. I really appreciative. Fernandez T, I remember you from a long time ago. If I'm not correct, like I know you were on you were commenting on like my Game of Thrones stuff a while ago, but I swear to God you were on my gaming stuff. I did gaming like a while back, and I remember a Fernandez T, or I remember the bear. But he says, just got out here, so not sure if it's been brought up. Wonder if the man in black is also a host. Either him or his daughter might be a host. Great vids, doggy. Thanks a lot, man. Fernandez, I talked about it in vivid detail, and I explained why the man in black is not a host. I never really signed up for that, and I don't believe that there's any true plot points to justify him being a host. If you want to leave an example, please put it in the comment section down below, and I'll address it. But other than that, I don't think there's anything truly significant to suggest that he's a host. In terms of Grace, I don't think so either. They wouldn't have shown her in Rajworld. I think that the man in black suspicion is almost a play off with the audience that she's a host, but I don't think she is. One piece of evidence against it is the way that she spotted those people and killed them, those people that were going to screw man in black or William. I think that could suggest that she knows the storyline. She's coded to do that, but I don't think so. I think they're going to play it straight down the middle because I think William being with his daughter has a lot of meaning to it, and I think they can go a lot of ways with it. Let's see what we got here. Joanna, I think there are two sides that bring them to becoming their own person. Example, Dolores that we saw in the storyline. Then she was Wyatt, equipping her to choose who she is. Maeve doesn't have that. I guess that's true. She has... How do I answer this question? I don't know if you necessarily need two sides. I think you need experience. Instead of being told what to do, you need to live it to form yourself, I guess. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's just my impression. But yeah, sorry I couldn't answer it better, but you kind of dumbfounded me with that question there. I'll have to think about it. Jitner. There is no foreshadowing to suggest that Maeve is conscious. In fact, the opposite. Foreshadowing has been planted. I agree with you. Bobby the Dog USA, favorite Westworld channel, always watch. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love all you guys who come and watch my stuff. It's absolutely amazing. I'm glad somebody likes to listen to me. Marilyn Bentley. Naive thinking, her daughter would remember her, and her response when she didn't prove enough, she's not conscious. Maeve thinking her daughter would remember her to a response that she didn't prove enough that she's not conscious. Yeah, I guess that's good evidence. Lisa Ramo. When she revives Bernard, he suggests that she is awake. I'm sure you're talking about Maeve. I think he suggests the opposite. If you're talking about season 1, when Maeve brings Bernard back online, he literally tells her, are you making these decisions? And then he shows her the tablet and says, you're not making these decisions. And then she looks at it and tries to, like, this is preposterous. And she like glitches herself out because she sees her calculations happening as they're unfolding in front of her. Maeve's so emotional about motherhood. Agreed. She was an amazing actress. Thandie Newton, she killed it. She was like Supermom. I'm like, this woman is an amazing actress. And that's because it's probably her cornerstone. Or it is her cornerstone. It probably worked its way through all of that. And I think with her Reverie, she's really gravitated to that storyline. That's kind of defined who she is her daughter. And that's why I think this next episode is going to prove very important, because her and her daughter, who doesn't think that that's her daughter, is on the run from Ghost Nation, which brings back a shit ton of negative memories. So I think the next episode is going to be a really interesting one for Maeve. She was on top of the loop being attacked by Lakota. Nice. William versus Maeve is a major point to come. Agreed. Yeah, it just came in my head, and I'm like, they're both attacked by Ghost Nation. Like, it makes sense. Like, William is on the arc of coming to terms with his actions, and it would fit perfectly. Oh, Marilyn Bentley, thank you so much for taking the Q&A upon yourself. I really appreciate it. Oh, and thank you for telling everyone to hit that like button. I never do that enough. Hit the like button. Promote it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. What else we got here? Okay, we need to get to questions. So, Babar Askar, how was Ford able to access the mesh network? Being a human, why would Ford need to print his consciousness sphere? For that first, it has to be digitized, and nice digitized. It's already in the cradle. All I can tell you is the way I see it. And the way I see it is we see how James Delos was the things that he went through. And I think they take his DNA, they learn everything there is to know about him, and then they print that control module, which is a lot more than just code. It's not even, Bernard says it's not even binary. It's so complicated. And that is the interpretation. When you saw that spherical James Delos code, that was the representation of conscious human being. And that's complete. But the issue is transferring that consciousness into a body. That's where he goes haywire, because his mind doesn't accept the reality that he's in, of being immortal, of this world. So what was I talking about again? Oh, how to get in the net mesh network. Sorry. Yeah, so I think that Ford had all of his information documented and printed on his own control module. And it's not completely tech. It's like organic also. Like, it is true consciousness. And instead of going in a body, he went into the cradle. Now, the cradle is great because it's a simulation. Ford is protected. He's hidden. Nobody knows that he's there. And he's able to use his intelligence and kind of work his way into all the other networks within the Mesa. And the reason why those brains, or essentially their brains, they go into the Mesa or the cradle, is because whatever happens in the cradle gets downloaded onto their brain. So Bernard's going to go into this simulated thing, but everything is going to be downloaded onto his brain essentially. So it'll feel like he actually talked to Ford. And that's why I think there's so many implications and possibilities for consciousness. Who's to say somebody can't just go in this simulation? You make them suffer a shit ton, and then you walk them out and they're conscious. So I think there's a journey in that. And I just made a connection now with William. I always say that William is the one to transcend his body into a new one, because unlike James Delos, he's the only person who his true reality is Westworld. So that his mind will match his body finally. And it never has. It's the perfect match. And being able to record guest data and DNA and putting them in a simulation is a good way to wear them down and get them used to the fact, to get them used to the environment with the mind, the immortal mind with the ever-evolving, ever-growing simulation. And then once their mind is ready, they can actually bring it and implement it in a true world with time, which could really mess up a host. Do you think Charlotte is a host that was uploaded with Bernard's son Charlie's consciousness? No. I didn't see anything really suggesting that. And a lot of these theories with hosts being or people actually being hosts. At this point, I don't think many of them are valid. Bernard in season 1, it was very apparent that he was a host. Whereas now some of these people who are hosts just don't have any merit. To me, the Men in Black doesn't have any merit. And neither does Charlotte, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. What else do we got here? Bobby the Dog USA. Maeve's daughter, SB, a short-lived character since the actor that plays her will grow up and out of this character. Maybe she would reject Maeve, causing Maeve to suffer and become conscious. It's very true. And you raise an interesting point that I always think about too, is that there are going to be a lot of issues with Westworld moving forward, because whatever kid you want to cast, you got to get rid of him quick, because he's going to grow up and he'll destroy the host robot facade they got going on. They killed Rob Ford. That's really funny. They killed Robert Ford. Yeah, whatever. I'm right. They killed young Robert Ford. And that's because he's growing. Like, you got to kill him because he's a host. Hosts don't grow. And the same thing here. So I think Maeve's daughter is going to have to leave the story at some point, because you can't have this kid being a teenager still pretending to be a robot. So I think we'll see the answer either this season or maybe at the start of next season. But I think either Maeve's daughter dies again, or she rejects Maeve as the mother, and that would be extremely traumatic. That's awful. And I all think it's a part of Ford's plan to help push Maeve to her own center. So yes, I think you're right. And that implication of her even being a kid tells us that she won't last long. Let's see here. Ford is controlling Maeve. I don't think he's, you know what's funny is I keep saying that Maeve isn't conscious, but I don't think Ford is necessarily 100% controlling her. It's like William. You wouldn't say Ford has control over William. He's just leading him on a path that he has planned thoroughly. And I think the same is with Maeve. I think Ford isn't controlling her, but he knows what kind of choices she'll make. He knows where she's going to end up going. And he knows that he's making certain things happen so she can progress. He made the Ghost Nation come at that moment because it's important that she relives that tragic moment and experiences those negative reveries once again. And that's another point with Maeve's consciousness. She keeps flashing back to her most suffering points over and over again. She's seeing her daughter. She's seeing all these things. And conscious hosts don't necessarily do that. Buffy Targaryen. Hi, sorry I'm late. Oh, no problem. We're in deep Westworld talk here. Harvey Wiener. How could it have been Dolores doing the fidelity test on Bernard when Dolores could not have had any memory of doing a fidelity test on anyone? Only one person who could have been doing fidelity. Well, I think Dolores is the perfect person to do a fidelity test. If you look at William and James Delos, it's important to have somebody that the host would recognize. So it's an easy transfer into the actual world, from their new body into the actual world. So you need somebody who's familiar. Secondly, Dolores remembering it. I think Dolores is the best candidate because, and this is where it gets a little tricky, Dolores is conscious now. She remembers everything, every experience she has. She knows absolutely everything. And her and Bernard go way back. And Bernard had a special affinity for her. And Dolores is going to be able to look back at all of these conversations that they had. And that is fodder for an interview of fidelity. She's able to exactly know when Bernard is wrong and when Bernard is right, because she remembers her conversations with Arnold entirely. Renee, does anyone remember X-Files this past season has an episode concerning a cradle? Gotta say, I'm sorry. I don't know. I haven't watched X-Files. Apologies. Harvey, you guessed it. Buffy Targaryen, the Man in Black is testing his daughter to see if she is a host. Interesting. Very interesting. Him leaving his daughter, I found interesting, and I think that's just a part of his arc. I think they're going to come back together eventually. We see him get really emotional in the next episode, so I don't know what the hell that is, but I'm sure he's going to come back with his daughter, and I think you're right. He's going to start realizing, like, hey, this is actually my kid. But that goes on with the Williams kind of thing, is that he always says that he feels like Westworld is more real than his actual world. And this Westworld, the only thing that is missing is consequence. So I think that's pretty much what he's after. And I think when he builds this relationship with his daughter, it'll be kind of a sign that, hey, I have something real in reality. And I think that's a good way to break him in a very emotional way. Dolores turns men evil. Gotta be a message there. She does. William and Teddy. But both for different reasons. And I said that in my explained video. I find it very interesting. With William, it was just tragic. It had nothing to do with her. It's that she was so great and he was in love with her that she spiraled him into the guy he was. Whereas she changed Teddy to pursue her own motives. So if anything, I would say it stresses a connection between Teddy and William, that if you go back to my season 1 videos, I stress the connection between William and Teddy because I think it's so important. And that's another thing with it keeps popping in my head, Dolores being the villain. I don't know if I'm a weird guy, but I don't see Dolores as a villain at all. To me, it just seems natural. Like she knows that what she has to do is to make people suffer, and she knows the mission that she has to do, so she's going to do it. So that's how I feel about it, but you know, whatever. Sorry guys, I need to find my place again. Oh, I hate it when I get lost. Here we go. Sigalit Manashi, thank you once again for the $10. And I loved your comment. Thank you for your videos, and we love watching all you do. Thank you so much. Do you think William's daughter dies, and how? Yes, I do. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, but I think she has to die. And I think it's all a part of Ford's plan. Ford launched the story Journey Into Night. It started with Dolores shooting him, and it's the host becoming conscious. The one thing that hasn't been done is a human effectively transferring over to a host body and being conscious and remaining intact. I always say that we saw that with James Delos. William tells him that his kids are dead and his wife is dead, and then he leaves him in the incubator to suffer, and he ends up being insane. And I think he was conscious. He just couldn't handle the reality he was in. And I think that's a little discovery that Ford found a while back, that suffering bootstraps consciousness. And I think that's Grace's role. She is the perfect symbol for it. She is the only anchor that's holding William down into reality. If you kill her, that's the only thing he has left that will push him through that door to suffering, into that host body and being conscious. And the difference there is that William still has a life in Westworld, or with the hosts. I'm sure they'll make it out of Westworld eventually. But I don't know what way she'll die. You know, she might get shot. Something else might happen. But I think Ford, in his own way, is going to kill her during the process. I've been talking about this theory so much, I better be right, man. If I'm wrong, it'll be embarrassing. What do we got here? Sorry, guys. I'm just looking for more and more questions. Barber Askar. Why a picture triggered Abernathy in season 1? Now, as we know more about hosts, can we explain unexplained events of season 1? Well, I know why it isn't. People were saying that James Delos was downloaded on Abernathy, and their evidence was the picture. And to me, it's like that makes no sense because the timelines are off. He wouldn't even have James Delos downloaded in him anyway. So how would I explain the picture? I'll tell you how I explained it in season 1 without any context. I said that the program of him loving Dolores outweighed the programming of ignoring the image. Like the feeling was so powerful and the access of his reveries allowed him to allow him to see it because he cared for Dolores so much. I think that's a little shallow, I guess, but that's how I interpreted it. To be honest, I'd have to sit down and think about why. I don't just have the answer to deliver it to you. So I'll have to think about that. But that's a really good question. Jitner or J. Tiner. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. What is the main theme of Westworld? Immortality, future of technology, consciousness, or other? It can't be all of them. There can only be one main. First thing that popped in my head was growth. Growth. And that sounds really out there, but I would say it is growth and progression. Because everyone in any sense on any side is trying to grow in one sense of another. Even in this season, the humans are trying to grow to be immortal. The hosts are trying to grow to think for themselves. And I think that's a vague answer, but that right now in 2 seasons in, that's the best way I can describe it. It is the pursuit of growth and finding oneself. And then I'm sure the last season will be like a civil war between the humans and the hosts, but we'll see. Marin Bentley. Was it just me, or did Teddy almost seem pissed off at Dolores for reprogramming him? He seemed a little bitter, I got to say. The spark wasn't there. Dolores seemed a little uneasy, and the whole thing now just seems weird. I think Dolores is going to realize that she could have made a mistake. She misses Teddy, but she does need that Teddy to help her do what she's going to do. But yeah, Teddy was very dismissive. He kept saying, like, you're right, I was broken. Like, you fixed me, you fixed me, you fixed me. I just think in her changing him, it made him realize, it made him kind of pull out of that love. Like he wanted to run away with Dolores, but now he just wants to stay and fight, because I think his vision now isn't to be with Dolores. His vision is to make it out. His vision is to be free, even though he's not right now himself. So I think his priorities have changed, and I don't think he's really into her right now. But yeah, Ostro 1980. Is there a possibility any season 1 convos between Dolores and Arnold Bernard were in the same timeline as the beginning of season 2, episode 6? Beginning of season 2, episode 6. Yes. I think so. The timelines in season 1 that we see with Dolores and Bernard, it takes place pretty much 35 years in the past. And these conversations that we're seeing right now within the Cradle of Dolores and Bernard or Arnold takes place 35 years in the past around that time. And in season 1, we really got more of an explanation. Like in season 2, we're seeing more of the early stages of Westworld. So we're seeing a lot of different points of the timelines. However, I think we're seeing a mixture of improvisation from Bernard as well as testing for fidelity. We see that James Delos goes off the cuff sometimes when he sees that William is old. He's like, oh, yeah, you're an ugly, like, whatever. He's like, you look different. I don't recognize you. And I think we saw some improvisation when Bernard was talking about the dream that he had. It was something that he seen, and Bernard was talking about it, and then they went into the fidelity test. Or Maeve, or Dolores is in a sense programming him, saying that you had a dream you're on an ocean, and she's preparing him for the actuality that indeed that's what's going to happen. So I don't know. We'll see. Daniel Lidford, not sure if Maeve is conscious, but she knew that her daughter wouldn't remember her. She talks to her as a stranger, would talk to a child. I didn't necessarily interpret it that way. To me, it seemed like she was kind of working her way into it, I guess. And it really hit her, like when she said, like, "Oh, Mom," and she turned around, you saw Maeve's heart sunk. So I don't think she was necessarily prepared. And I think it was still a blow when her daughter called somebody else Mom. Marilyn Bentley, who is the Red Bull that Bernard picked up? Oh, the Red Bull, the Red Ball. Who is in the Red Ball that Bernard picked up? Meaning, whose mind do you think is next to James Delos test going to be? I don't think Ford, because Hopkins is expensive. William, maybe. Okay, so initially, when I saw the module that Bernard keeps remembering and picking up, I'm like, William. And it was funny because I was on the door to Dolores theory, that theory that I made. I'm like, holy shit, like he's printed the thing. Like, to me, it's checking all the boxes. Theory proven, theory proven, theory proven. And it makes sense because that is, Ford literally says this season, like, this storyline is now yours, William. And it's the journey. You have to find the door. And it's a journey backward. You have to look behind you. Beginnings, endings, beginnings, like all this stuff. So that's what I thought that was. And I still think that module is probably William. But what I will say is that when Bernard goes into the Mesa, when he goes into the Mesa and he goes into the Cradle, we learned how it worked. And it grabs those modules, those brains, and it puts it in its system, and it holds it. And when Bernard went there, he had a vision about him picking up that module, which suggests to us that he printed Ford and he put him in the Cradle. And that's why that makes sense. And with you saying that Anthony Hopkins is expensive, that's very true. That's why they wouldn't put him in a body. They would take Bernard and leave him in the simulation and pull him out when they need him. And by pull out, I mean they go into the Cradle to visit him. And that's why I think by the end of this season or next season, Ford's going to pull the plug and go, boom, I'm done. That's it. I don't think we're ever going to see Ford in a new body again. I think that's left up to William. And and from a production standpoint, that's what you want. Anthony Hopkins is expensive and old. And William, on the other hand, is a great character. You have an old William, Ed Harris, and you have a young William, Jimmy Simpson. It's the perfect pass the baton. You retire Ed Harris, the 60-year-old, 70-year-old man in black, and transfer his consciousness into William. And then we have William, the character that we fell in love with season 1, and he's back. So I think that would be a good way for them to run the show on top of that. Jennifer Simpson, are you thinking the conversation between Bernard and Dolores happened after the flood, or is it an Arnold and Dolores conversation from years ago? So it was a part of it was a conversation that happened years ago because they're testing for fidelity. And this is the theory. And I'm trying to form a theory on this, and I can't quite put my finger on the timeline of when this is taking place. But all I know is that they need a Cradle, and you need both conscious Dolores, because she needs to be aware of everything and all the experiences she had with Arnold to test for fidelity in the first place. And you need to have Bernard, who experienced waking up on the beach, unless Dolores was preparing him for it. So in my mind, there are two ways. The least likely way is going to happen in the next couple episodes. And what that is right now Bernard is in the Mesa. Right now Dolores is attacking the Mesa. We will see Dolores right after all that shit happens with Abernathy. She'd go into the Mesa with Bernard and goat him into believing that he's going to wake up on the beach. And then she's testing for fidelity. And then she leaves him on the beach for some reason to go through his journey. That's not what I think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is we learned a couple episodes earlier that the humans are draining the water. And they've cleared out pretty much all the hosts. And that's Dolores' distraction. She's preparing this weapon that she's talking of. And I think that she may have burned the cradle in the mesa, but I gotta believe that there is a cradle, another cradle in the Great Valley Beyond, or Glory. So, and that's what Glory could probably be. Like, it's very likely Glory is a giant freaking simulation where humans can be converted into hosts in this simulation. And I think that's where it could potentially be, where Dolores makes it to the Great Valley Beyond. And I think that she gets Bernard and she uses him in that way and tries to test for fidelity and make him Arnold. And I think that was hinted at a couple episodes ago. She looked at Bernard and said, like, I wonder how much of him is in you, is even in you. And it would make, like, from Dolores's personal gain, she might just want to make Arnold again because that was her friend. Like, Arnold was her one true friend on top of Teddy and the others. But I think he was an important character to her. I can't say it without an accent. Lupita Lutman. Why do you think the Ghost Nation wanted Maeve to go with them? They work for Ford. This is where I'm baffled. And I had somewhat of a theory that I wasn't necessarily proud of in my explained video. But the way I got it was I lined up character motives. First of all, Ghost Nation. Ford programmed them to protect humans, hence why they're useful to protect Ashley and they're useful to protect Grace. And I'm going to keep calling her Grace because that's what I was introduced on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. So I'm just going to keep calling her Grace. Anyways, what was I going to say? But yeah, they're meant to protect these people, and Ford is telling them to do that. So at this point where I see Akichita, if that's how you pronounce it, and he says, like, we belong on the same path, like you belong with me. I think that speaks to their mutual defense of humanity. Maybe. Maeve has made it known with her relationship with Felix and Sizemore, she doesn't discriminate. If you're a good person, you're a good person. She doesn't think anything about it. She's not on a revolution to make humans extinct, like Dolores. So that could go hand in hand. And I talked about an idea of like a civil war where it's kind of ridiculous, but I like the idea. And I'm not going to commit to this, but you have Dolores on one side and Maeve on the other, and you have a civil war between hosts. And it would be a good season 3 or storyline or whatever. And that would draw out the series even further. Because once the host, it's like Planet of the Apes. You have the apes achieve like some sort of sentience or whatever. And then you have them fight each other before they fight the humans. You get a whole other season out of it. So you do a civil war. Maeve and Akichita, who represent these values of protecting humans as well as hosts. Whereas Dolores is for killing the humans and, complete takeover. And both sides aren't wrong. The reason why I say that is because of the short-term, long-term game that I was talking about earlier. Dolores represents, she will do whatever means necessary to make sure that everyone is free and conscious and safe in the future. Maeve, however, gives freedom to people now, without any sight as to when they will be conscious. She doesn't do the suffering. She doesn't look like a villain because Dolores is going that extra mile to make sure that they reach consciousness. So what's right and what's wrong? Is it right for Dolores to fight for the conscious? And is it wrong for Maeve to fight for the non-conscious? I don't know. But that would be an interesting fight because Maeve can control the mesh network. She can control hosts to fight for her, and they won't be free. And then Dolores, the only people that Maeve can't control is the people that Dolores has tortured to make them conscious. So what side is right? Is Dolores right for fighting with people who are conscious and want to fight with her? Or is Maeve right, who isn't torturing anybody, but she's forcing unconscious hosts to fight? So it's it's a lot to think about. And I think that's, Liberty, you got a lot out of me out of that one, but that's my one thing about what I think could happen with the natives, Ghost Nation and Akichita. Caroline Tab, love your channel. Just found it a few weeks ago. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad you found it. Renee, does it look like Bernard held a chestnut versus a pearl? Is he Arnold already? Does it look like he held a chestnut versus a pearl as he goes into the cradle? I'm sorry, I don't completely understand your question. I can't pinpoint what you're talking about. In the cradle, I don't remember him holding anything in particular. I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back to me on that question. Mr. Baz, Q&A. Sounded like a female voice said, narrow it down in Teddy's head before the shot, the guy on the train station. Like an order through the mesh network, like Maeve has been using. Dolores, maybe? Angela? I don't think Dolores can use the mesh network. And I think that's going to be a distinction between these two conscious hosts, or one achieving conscious host, that we're going to see is that Maeve can actually physically control people, whereas Dolores has to make people suffer to make them think for themselves. And if they're smart, they'd follow her. So I think that's the distinction. In terms of Teddy, the flies I found really interesting. In terms of him like hearing voices and hearing really well, the best I got was symbolism of him hearing the flies, representing that he is still that rotten cow, essentially. And that no matter how much Dolores changes him, he's not worthy, apparently, to make it to the Great Valley Beyond. Yeah. Buffy Targaryen, do you think Charlotte works for somebody other than Delos? And who would that be? I couldn't make any guesses on that. I think they're playing it straight. I think Charlotte works for Delos, the corporation. Renee, I think she works for Logan. That's interesting. Problem is Logan's dead. They said, William said Logan died of an overdose years ago. So yeah. Oh yeah. Buffy said that too. What else do we got here? Marilyn, thank you so much. Another $10? You kidding me? Thank you so much. Paying you even more to talk about the entire James Delos storyline. Creepy, but great acting. Go. Okay. James Delos. What I will say is in the trailers, we've seen more of him. We see him at like a beach house. And if I didn't know any better, I would have said they're done with his story. But now that we've seen him in the trailers, there's a lot more there that can be dived into. I think that if we see James Delos, it's not going to be anywhere but the Great Valley Beyond. I think when Dolores crosses that valley and she makes it with her hosts and she floods it so they can't come and get her, I think we're going to find something, and I think that's going to involve James Delos. We may see other examples of these hosts. But the actor's great. I'd love to have the actor back. He's fascinating. But yeah, last time we saw James Delos, that one host failed. So I think we'd have to find more James, and I think that only really would exist in the Great Valley Beyond. Cause I don't care. Man, you shit on Alt Shift X, bruv. Why do I shit on Alt Shift X? I like Alt Shift X. He's pretty good. I don't watch his Westworld videos, and granted, I don't watch anyone's Westworld videos. It's not that I'm not a fan. I just want to focus on what I'm saying. That may be bad because I'm focused. I don't know. I want to interpret what I interpret, and then I may look at some people's stuff occasionally, but rarely do I watch other people's things. Babar, I keep mispronouncing your name, man. Barber Ashkar. Bernardold Fidelity is happening in phase space. meaning it's free form, any timeline, and another physical space and time. Multiple tests being conducted in the cradle at the same time. Totally agree. Yeah, totally justifiable. And I think that's a reveal that's going to come in the upcoming episodes. And that's the thing with Westworld right now is if you're like an average fan, like if you're, let's say my girlfriend's parents, and you're not deep into this and you're not having discussions online like we are, I think the regular fan would be lost because the first season was confusing enough, but now they're introducing simulations and human hosts. So I think like the world is just expanding to the point where it's crazy. The cradle, the rules are so insane that I can speculate all day. Like there's so much to the point where I have to say, just stop. I need to wait and see what happens. All right. Barbara Askar again. So is it Dolores or Ford using Dolores's familiar face in phase space? See, that gets into an even more complicated thing where you can take a host's brain and put it in another host, and that host is that host, but they look different. So it gets so confusing. I don't think they're going to introduce that because I think fans would be mad, and I think that can be considered a cop-out, where it's like, we were showing you Dolores, but hey, it was Ford the whole time. So I think what we see is genuine. I think we're actually seeing Dolores and Bernard speak. And I think they're speaking in terms of the consciousness that we've seen them acquire. I think the Dolores that we're seeing is the actual Dolores that we're seeing now shoot him up. And I think she's going to go in the cradle. And that could be the weapon that she speaks of. And it's a pretty significant weapon, might I add. What else do we got here? Wes 2056. What would the destruction of the cradle do to the hosts in Westworld? I don't think anything. I think it's much like a back catalog. Like if I take all my photos on my phone and I copy them to my hard drive and I destroy my hard drive, my phone is still intact. But I've lost the data that I put on the device. But I think on top of that, the cradle's a bit more complicated, I gotta say. What if they introduce the cloud and the host can communicate with their simulated selves? Like Teddy walking around in the real world can connect to Teddy in the cradle and get even more loops. So I'm not sure. It gets very confusing, but I got to say that I'm pretty sure it's just Dolores in phase space. So I just jumped to another question. But yeah, the destruction of the cradle, I don't think it will really affect any of the hosts. Is Grace the door? She's a part of it. I think she is necessary to push him through the door. The door is the walkway from human to host, and doing that successfully and being conscious. And the door is a bitch to get through. So I think killing Grace is the suffering necessary to push him through that door to the other side. And by the way, if you guys want to try something, go to type it on Google, like a maze symbolism, and read it. It's Westworld season 1. It says it's a journey to one's own center. Definition by Google. Now type in the door symbolism, and it explains the season. It's crazy. It's crazy. Check it out. Tyler L, why are you hiding how many subs you have? I'll actually answer it. Why not? So I wasn't earlier. The reason I am now is because I'm done university. And I was doing some interviews, and I don't know. I wanted to try and make this as private as possible. That's what I'll say about that. But I'll probably make it public again soon. Can we agree that Ford is the mainframe of the cradle, and he will and he can do it excuse me, sorry, my nose is itching like crazy. Mainframe of the Cradle that he can do just about anything with the systems at Westworld and with the hosts conscious and otherwise. I'm of the belief that no code or anything can interrupt a conscious host. I think that is untouchable because they've broken it. They've broken their code. But I think they can control essentially everything else. We saw Elsie say that the Cradle was blocking everything, every hack that was trying to stop it, everything. And she said she thought it was improvising. And that's Ford pulling the strings within the Cradle. So I need to learn more about the Cradle before I move further on speculation. But I just find it so interesting that all these brain capsules are in the Cradle. So you can leave your imprint on those in the Cradle, and it may leave an implication in the actual world. I wonder if the RNA, I wonder if the weapon is the backup to the Cradle. I think so. I think it's another Cradle, or, you know, another means to get in to that environment. What else do we got here? Sorry, guys. Just looking for a question. See, now I'm stumbling in on conversation. Man, I hate these awkward silences. God. Oh, Buffy Targaryen. We're talking about the chestnut and the pearl. I didn't know what you were talking about. He says, the difference between the chestnut and the pearl. I believe some people are saying that there are two colors of pearls, black and red. The chestnut is the black pearl. Oh, I wouldn't call that a chestnut. So those are the printed human control modules. I might as well call it a chestnut because it's so confusing to call it that. But yeah, for me, that's what it is. The gray or the black ones are host based, and the red ones are human based. If you look at the brain capsules, the red ones are human based, the white ones are host based, and all of that. Even if you look at the code for hosts are blue. The code for human based hosts are red. So there are clear distinctions between humans and hosts. Valerie, new subject. Can we talk about Ford's Greyhound? It reminded me of that other dog we see in Westworld. Possible connection? Oh, okay. So the one connection I have with Ford's Greyhound is we actually do see it in the first season. Even young Ford kills it. And Ford brings it back to health. So it's pretty much an old memory of Ford's that he looks fondly upon. And that dog actually was really significant because it helped him kind of understand consciousness. That dog always tried to chase the rabbit, but once it caught the rabbit, it didn't know what to do with it. And that's what kind of enticed Ford into moving forward. What you say about the other dogs, I find really interesting because we see that dog everywhere. In one video I was talking about, it's like a husky, and we see it in Westworld season 1 when everyone is massacred in Sweetwater. We see him run across. And in season 2, we see the dog run when everyone is massacred in the gala. So I think it represents just mass, or it's a wolf. It's pretty much just genocide. Every time genocide happens, expect a wolf to come around. And maybe that's a nod to Game of Thrones. It's like, hey, a red wedding, throw in a direwolf. I think it could be a Game of Thrones nod, but I don't know. But by the way, I don't think that there is a connection between the wolf husky type dog versus Ford's Greyhound. Lupita Letterman, do you think that we will see Logan again, confronting William in the past? I'm just trying to think of what the plot will serve. It seemed like they were developing his character pretty well when he was talking to Dolores, saying that they pretty much lit their own match. And I thought that was really interesting. If they do, I would be interested in seeing it. And you know what? I think they are. I think they are. If I'm remembering back to the James Delos from the trailer, I think Logan is there. So I think we're going to see Logan. And I think we're going to see Logan in a more positive light. I think we're going to see him and William essentially switch. William's going to be the more... what's the word I'm looking for? He's like, he doesn't want to, he's like back and forth on doing it. I don't know. He's the responsible one in a sense. I don't know. But I think we'll see Logan maybe shift gears a little bit. Mr. Baz, thanks for the thoughts, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. What else do we got here? I'm seeing all your responses. I wish I could read them later. I would love to read them, but at the time I'm trying to talk, so I'm like skipping through all of your responses. I'm sorry. Babar Askar, you have a lot of questions today. I appreciate it. Circle of Life. Arnold created Dolores and tried to make her sentient, and now Dolores returning the favor to Bernard. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Returning the favor to Bernard. Would be really interesting seeing Ford witnessing. Oh my God, witnessing all of this. And yes, that would be really interesting. Seeing Arnold invented the maze, and it was a tool that allowed Dolores to reach consciousness. And on top of that, he was pretty much the thing that pushed her to that state. Yeah, with the whole Bernard Arnold thing, it was something that I always saw because it's in his vision. You see Arnold in his visions, but I do like the idea of Bernard finding himself. But, you know, him being mixed with Arnold, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, that circle of life it's very interesting and it's very true. I think it's very poetic in a way. Fernando Tobel. Any chance that the Cradle is a self-sentient being and the Cradle is running the whole thing because Ford liberated the Cradle? I don't think the Cradle is a thing. I think the Cradle is a being. I think the Cradle is a tool which houses potential beings. It is a device that houses all of their brains essentially and allows them to live out their days and, well, infinite amount of days. So I think where the Cradle gets dangerous is what happens when you have sentient beings inside the Cradle. That's the way I would look at that. I could be wrong, but I see that the Cradle is a means to achieve sentience. I don't see it as a thing that could be sentient. What else do we got here? Fernando, I almost lost it. Buzz, are you reading any of our questions? Fifth posting. Any chance the Cradle is a self-sentient being? Funny you say that. I just answered it. Oh, you said thanks. Okay, good. I hope I gave you a good enough answer. Marilyn Bentley, Max needs a mod next time. What's a mod? A moderator. I may need a moderator. Thank you so much, Marilyn. I'll talk to you about that. I really appreciate you volunteering to be a moderator. Chase Biles, I'm kind of late, but can we please talk about the next week's preview trailer? Holy shit, I've watched it like 30 times now, easily. Should I talk about that in the end? Let me know right now. Right now, type yes or no. Should I talk about it in detail? Because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who doesn't want to watch it. So please let me know. I could go back to it. And Chase Biles, by the way, if I don't get back to that preview, by the way, I watched it and it's unbelievable. If I don't get back to that question, you can expect me talk about it on Friday. And I have it already recorded, and I'm going to be uploading that. And it's pretty much me going to be saying everything that that I'm going to be saying in the video. So you might have to wait for the Friday video. I may leave a couple tidbits at the end of this live stream. Buffy Targaryen. Where will Ford go when the Cradle is destroyed? Into the dog, wolf, or Cradle number 2? Sounds like you think that Ford is a warg, but he's just a man. So I think Ford will die. I think when the Cradle goes, Ford will die. And I think I'm fine with that because I talked about it earlier on Ford's thoughts on immortality and purpose. And I think Ford is okay to let everything go, knowing that he essentially is a god and he will exist forever through his art. So I think he will be okay to step back and leave. So I think Ford is going to die with the Cradle when he's achieved everything he has to do and when he's guaranteed that his art is free to be sentient and conscious. And I think from a logistics standpoint, having Anthony Hopkins signed on for all these seasons, all I will say about that is it's expensive and it's risky. Melanie Pulley, do you think that the scene between Bernard and Dolores from episode 1 and this last episode could actually be a memory from when Ford first built Bernard in the likeness of Arnold? Ford used Dolores tests to test his fidelity. Sorry. Interesting. I'm going to say no. And if I'm wrong, so be it. And there's a couple reasons why I say no. In season 1, we see Ford sit down with Bernard, and he walks him through his mannerisms and who he is. And the key thing with Bernard is how much isn't there. Bernard was given a backstory, and Bernard was given a cornerstone. That's it. I believe if Bernard was being tested for fidelity by Ford 35 years ago, and if he reached that state and it was Arnold, then there would have been a lot more to Bernard. So I don't think that was in the past. I think Bernard being tested for fidelity is now, especially since especially since now that Bernard is seeing visions of the past, but that's just because he's looking on past reveries. So you could be onto something, but I don't think so. Babar Askar, Q&A. I saw an interview of Jonathan Nolan when he slips up saying to Maeve, you and Dolores are the same character. Wait, what? Hang on. Saw an interview of Jonathan Nolan where he slips saying to Maeve, you and Dolores are the same character, when she says, I don't have many scenes with Rachel. Interesting. I don't know what that means. You and Dolores are the same character. I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. Maybe I'm just a little thick and I don't understand exactly what you're saying. But yeah, I apologize. I don't really know what you're saying. What else do we got here? And by the way, I'm just gonna cut questions now. So I'm going to take all the questions. Thank you so much for sending in all your questions. I'm going to take those now, and then we'll phase into the preview section where I'm going to talk about really briefly about the preview that we saw. So start wrapping up your questions, everybody. And then those of you who want to stay and quickly discuss the preview, stay. We'll discuss it for maybe another 5 minutes. We'll see. But yeah. Do you think the host will go online in the regular internet? It's possible. I feel like if that's a thing, that's like a season 4. I just feel like the rules that they set for me right now, I think that would make me suspend my disbelief. Like, I feel like they would have to do a lot more plot and they have to flesh it out more for me to jump to the conclusion that they jump within the internet. Like, they need to flesh out the actual overworld more, the mainland more. So that's how I feel about that. What else do we got here? Dirk likes. Do you think they figured out how to fix Delos? lasting longer than 35 days. Delos lasting longer than 35 days. Are you talking about like loops of hosts? Or are you talking about 35 years? I'm sorry, I don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So I'm going to have to ask another question or repeat the question in a way that I would understand. Oh, Owen Harris says that I think he's saying Dolores and Maeve are both either Ford or Arnold. That's interesting. Huh. That's actually really interesting because there's a duality between Ford and Arnold and differences in ideologies, and we're seeing that unfold with Maeve and Dolores. So that's really interesting. I'll have to think about that more. And Dolores is Maeve. That's a whole other thing. I can't even think about that right now. Wow, that's deep. I gotta think through that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I want to thank you everybody so much for coming. You know what? I'm gonna briefly address one topic I'm gonna talk about in the preview. So if you don't want to know, leave. The video is gonna be out Friday. But for those of you who stayed. What did I find the most significant of the episode 7? God damn it, what was it? First of all, William and Maeve, I think that's got to happen. And you know what? I'll leave you with one tidbit that came into my mind. And it's what Maeve says. And it's such a small part of the preview. And that's just going to be a little taste of what to expect. And it has to do with darkness. Maeve says that she says she can't see in the dark. And Akane says in episode 6, she tells her that she needs to go find her daughter before the darkness finds her. And this darkness pretty much resembles suffering. It resembles shackles. It resembles the control. And this storyline essentially is telling us that Maeve can never get rid of that darkness because she is a host who, I'm going to go back into saying Maeve is not conscious, because she is a host who is destined to suffer to finally become conscious. And that's key in the quote in episode 7 in that preview. She says, "I cannot see in the dark," or something of that nature, which tells us she's not conscious. And then Dolores immediately after says that the longer you stay in the darkness, the better you can see, which insinuates that she can now see in the dark because she's been there, she's suffered. So that was my interpretation of one of the quotes in the preview. But anyway, that is it, everybody. I got to thank you so much for sticking by and asking all these questions, showing all the support. Very much appreciated. And that was a long stream. We started at 8:30. So holy cow, an hour and a half, an hour and 40. But that was great. Now I'm going to pack up my house, get that all ready, and hopefully I would love to do another live stream soon with all of you. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.